Welcome, everybody, to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. I'm excited to share my guest with you today. I'm also excited to get to know her myself. We have a mutual friend, and that's who connected us. I have Nicole Corning. She is a financial advisor by trade, and we're going to get into her life and learn more about who she is and what she's all about. So thank you for being here, Nicole. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Good. And you have a podcast too.
I do have a podcast.
So this is no stranger to you. You're comfortable with the microphone, and it's kind of, something that you're used to.
Yeah, there's actually a joke that my friend Renee and I have, because at one point we were at a conference and the people who were asking the questions and running around with microphones had to leave. So they gave one to me and Renee. And I was like, I started answering the questions. I'm like, I'm not giving this microphone back. So that's our joke. We give each other like microphones as gifts. And
oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So
it's like your thing.
Yeah.
Do you do it together? Is it the two of you or just you?
So my podcast I do with my my friend Kathleen. Okay. And so it's the two of us. And it's based on a book I wrote, probably about 14 years now, which is also on Amazon. Same name, The Working Mommy's Manual.
The Working Mommy's Manual.
And then the podcast is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and same name, Working Mommy's Manual. So we have we're a little behind in getting some episodes posted. So, but there are a lot of back episodes on there right now.
Nice. So, so let's dive into that for a minute, because how did that come about? You're a mom, you have two boys. How did the book come about? Because that's a big deal to just write a book. And you said it was about 14 years ago?
It was about 14. So
what happened?
I started writing. So that really came out of, I had always been raised by parents and family members and surrounded by a community who made me think you could do anything you want to do. And there's really no difference between men and women. You can, do the exact same things. And that's how I lived my life. And then I got pregnant. And I was like, oh, it's not the same at all. And I mean, and that's a loaded, description, because obviously there are a lot of differences, between being a pregnant woman and a man who just, has impregnated someone. Yes, it's different. But yes. I was professional, and I was working in financial services.
So you've always been in financial services. Has that been your career path?
No, actually, when I was in college and first out of college, I lived and worked in DC. Oh. And that was my career path, had always been, I wanted to go into politics and I wanted to help people.
Oh, wow.
I know. So very strange, yeah.
Where are you from originally?
From Boston.
Okay. What took you to DC?
Originally, politics. So I grew up in a part of Boston called Dorchester, and anyone who knows Boston, they're like, Dorchester. It is, if you know the movie Good Will Hunting.
Oh, yeah.
So Dorchester is right next to
there.
That part of South Boston that, they lived in and was kind of rough.
Southpaw.
And it was. And people sometimes say, well, did you live in the nice part of Dorchester? I'm like, oh, in the 80s, there was no nice part of Dorchester. But I grew up in a family that was very politically minded and very activist oriented. And that was always, I felt like a calling to me to help people. And so I went to DC to help people. And then I quickly realized it's not necessarily about helping people. It's more about who's winning and who's losing. At least it was at that point. This is back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I do think it's probably become even worse in some respect. I still go back. I do lobbying work on behalf of the American Retirement Association.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I actually sound very boring now. I'm like, we're going to talk about my life. Oh gosh, I'm going to come up with some good stories. Because I am a financial geek now, but back in my early days, I was very passionate about helping people. I had the honor of working on 2 presidential campaigns. I worked on, I worked for a political consulting firm. So we worked on multiple campaigns during the campaign season. So I was able to get a flavor for a lot of different candidates and, congressional space and Senate space and even kind of in the down ballot, state races. And one thing I learned is that there are great people on both sides of the aisle and there are terrible people on both sides of the aisle.
For sure.
And I wasn't interested in just advocating kind of blindly for one or the other. And also I realized working at that level, you don't have really any autonomy over your life. Because, if you're working at the presidential level and a war breaks out in the Middle East, it doesn't matter if you're on vacation. It doesn't matter if you haven't had vacation all year. It doesn't matter if your kid has a recital. And so I actually worked for a woman who's very well known in Democratic political circles. If I said her name, which I'm not going to, but she's very recognizable. She was part of the Obama administration. She was part of the whole decision with Biden to step down. Like, she's very well known. And I worked for her, and there aren't a lot of women at that level. And to see the kind of things that she had to make sacrifices for, and I'm not judging anyone, right? Like, that was what she had decided to do. But I saw the sacrifices she had to make, and I thought, if I want to have any kind of any ancillary life, besides what I do, I can't do this. And
that's a big realization.
And
it's a big choice too.
And it was because I was like at 27.
You were
I
high
thought my
in the
life was,
ranks.
and I thought my life was over. I'm like, well, I'm leaving politics. Like, that's everything I wanted to be since I was little. I got to the presidential political level, and
you were on a high level,
right? And look, I was like making coffee. Let's be clear. Like,
but you were there.
But I was there. I got to see a lot of amazing things. I had a lot of amazing opportunities. I did some incredibly cool things. I met wonderful, wonderful people. But I was, so at 27, I was like, I don't want what I do to be who I am.
Right.
Completely.
Right.
I do like to be inspired by what I do. And I still think, even though I'm kind of lame in financial services now, and it's not quite as sexy as working, in politics, but it is still a calling for me, the work that I do in finance. So yes, at 27, I thought, oh, my life is over. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I pivoted to financial services, and that went through some different iterations as well. And then approximately 15 years ago, partnered up with my current, I own a financial advising firm in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I co-own it.
Right.
And I was brought into this particular part of financial services by my partner 15 years ago. We opened our own firm 5 years ago, and that's been incredibly fulfilling, because if I thought there weren't many women in politics,
I'm sure it's even less.
It's only 20% of advisors are women.
Wow.
20. And
whoa. Why do you think that is?
How much time do we have for the podcast?
Well, and do you think that it's okay? But
I could talk for like
here's
8
another
years.
question. Do you think that it's changing?
It isn't, which is
Interesting.
Which is disappointing. So since I've been in this space, and look, there are a lot of positives for not having women in the space, because like anytime I go to a conference, I don't have to wait in a line for the bathroom. There's never a line for the bathroom. Like, it's just me. I have all the personal space I need. So there's a benefit. Our industry has been trying to bring women into the industry for probably at least, like, in a specific way. I've been aware of it for at least the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because there's going to be a huge transition of wealth. There's like a $3 trillion transition of wealth that's going to fall into the laps of women, because quite frankly, and if you're in a heterosexual relationship, we outlive our husbands at the same age by 2 years. And typically we marry men who are 2 years older than us. So again, this is, if you're in a same-sex marriage, this isn't the same, but So that's the data behind this $3 trillion transfer of wealth. Wow. And I do find, not always, but women do like to typically work with women. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think the number one is that we don't condescend. So I have a client of mine, husband and wife, and we've worked with them, my partner and I've worked with them for, I don't know, over a decade. And she probably 2 years ago said, did you ever wonder why I chose you and Perry, your partner? And I said, no, I didn't. I mean, I figured you'd interviewed and you just felt most comfortable with us. And she said, and she's an MBA. She runs all of the finances. She does everything for this couple, and it's a man and a woman. And she said, when my husband and I went to meet advisors, I would ask them questions, and then they would turn to my husband and answer him.
Oh, that's one of my biggest pet peeves.
It's so...
My husband and I talk about it all the time. He's like, oh, Tammy's going to be pissed. They're not looking at her.
Like, sir,
he knows.
You need to stop doing what you're doing. Like, you are...
Totally.
Abort mission, right?
It's a real thing. Eric's like, oh, dude, this is not going to go well. Tammy's going to be totally turned off. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. And it happens when you are getting your car fixed or you're getting a quote for
all over the
some
place.
work. It happens all the time, but it is markedly pronounced because we're also not only is it 80% men, but it's only 4% of advisors are people of color. And
wow.
And we are a very old industry. So I don't know what the age is, but I want to say the average age is like 62 for
Sounds
the
like
average.
the good old boy kind of thing.
It
School of thought.
It can be. It's interesting. So there can be those dynamics, but I think because of the work that I do in the industry and how I brand myself in the industry, I have been able to surround myself by men who are real advocates and allies for women, and not just for myself, but for women at large.
Well, probably because that's what's attractive to you and wanting to work with them. You're like, hey, listen, you got to see it this way or we're not going to mesh.
Yeah. Well, or they're just like, I love your vibe. Like, I love what you're saying. I have a daughter I want to bring in. I have a junior partner who's a woman. I see the value of what you're talking about. And I want to connect with that. And I say it all the time. So I do a lot of work in the financial services space. I serve on a lot of organizations and committees that work to get more women to come into financial services and then support them once they get there. And I always say the purpose of the work that I'm doing is so that someday no one's going to have this committee. Right? Like someday
they'll learn how to do it on their own.
And I don't always want to be the face of it. There's a women's conference in our industry that I was very involved with from very early days. And I spoke at it probably almost every single year. So to the point where like the guys who do the sound, where I was like, hey, there you are. When are we making you up? So last year at last year's conference, I ran into the sound guys and they were like, oh, when are you speaking? And I said, oh, I'm not speaking this year. And they were like, come on. I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, how do you feel about that? And I was like, I'm psyched because it means that the work I did showed another woman that she should volunteer for the committee and that she has a voice and she has value, because it's not about the movement isn't about me. The movement is about how can we get more women?
The big picture.
It's the big picture. Like that, the work you do is to sustain the work. The work is to get more women in, not like it's not the Nicole show.
Right.
Although the microphones might say otherwise.
Well, it is interesting too, because I don't know how much you know about masculine and feminine energy and how every human has that. And it's interesting that you're in a line of work and you're very much in your masculine energy. I mean, I can just feel you. That's not a bad thing. It's just who you are and where you are. But it's interesting because in a line of work that is male dominated, I also came from a line of work that was male dominated.
What was your
I've been in communications. So I have been in media. marketing and media forever. And I was in the telecommunications industry for a very long time, which was completely male dominated.
Yep.
So every conference, every event, everything I went to, I was, you know, in a room full of men, and there'd be a few women sprinkled throughout. And
you're like, hey, hi.
Right. So it was great for me at that point because I have always been a go-getter, and I'm very, you know, driven, and I'm like, you know, I like to work, and I have lived in my masculine energy enough to be like, okay, I'm going to pave my own way. I'm very independent. I don't need a man, and all the things.
Yeah.
And so I could hold my own in a room full of men, no problem. And it was great because that's a skill that I don't know that I would have gotten otherwise. But now where I am today, I've realized, wow, what a funny awareness that I now have about myself is that I can definitely be in a masculine energy, but I was missing some of this feminine energy because that's where my balance was lacking. And I was so driven and so achievement oriented, and it wasn't really serving my best self. It was truly like holding me back and making me realize that, well, finally I hit a wall of exhaustion. And it was like, oh my gosh, and then I kept hitting more walls. And that's what really led eventually to my spiritual and self-realization awakening, which was, okay, I have been living so far in the masculine energy that I have completely abandoned my feminine energy self. And it's so common for women that are successful. And when I say successful, I mean in their careers and in their business and in their drive, everything I did from every aspect. I mean, I had 4 kids. I didn't just have 2. I had 4.
And you had 4 boys. So talk about masculine energy. You're
right.
like, I'm just birthing another boy.
Exactly.
Just pumping out more testosterone in the world.
Exactly. But it's funny.
And I have 2 boys. So
yes, exactly. Well, it's funny because when I'm around women like you, and I've always related very, very well to men. I really have. Mm-hmm. I'm drawn to them. They're drawn to me in a friendship way. We just relate.
Yes.
We relate. I'm very close to men. I appreciate men's energy. And I think that's when you're a woman, and I'm just speaking specifically about being a woman, a female in that type of space, it really is eye-opening and very telling about yourself because you realize where you can be and where you are not, and maybe where there needs to be a balance shift.
So a couple of things you said that hit real hard for me. So the first is talking about being in a certain space, recognizing it might not be the right space, and pivoting. Mm-hmm. So that is, whenever I'm on a panel or I get interviewed, they always say, what advice do you give your younger self? Or what's the best advice you can give? And I always say it's fail forward, because you're not really failing. It's not like you did, it's that you did something, you learned from that, and then you pivoted into something else. And I think women in general we're very hard on ourselves. We strive for perfection in like everything. And so if we're not achieving it, we feel like we're lacking, or we're not worthy, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So one of the messages I always deliver is fail forward, because it's not really failing, right? You're just shifting into where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that hit really hard was the masculine and feminine energy. So I do energy work with Bianca, who's our mutual friend who introduced us, and I have some other friends. My friend Pasquale, I've done energy work with him, and he, he's quite frankly, and so as Bianca have said, you have a lot of masculine energy, and I think. I grew up in a rough area of an inner city, and you have to have a lot of masculine energy because you don't want to get beat up all the time, right? And you have to have this hard outer shell. And my parents, who are amazing human beings, but they're human beings, right? So you do the best you can, but I had a lot of kind of chaos and craziness around my earlier years. My father struggled with addiction, and my mother struggled with depression. And so I was the oldest daughter. There are all these memes about
how many siblings do you have?
I have one sibling, my brother, who I love dearly, even though he's like mad at me right now. Sean, I love you. I end up taking a lot more of a mothering role. I'm not a mother to my brother, but I end up sometimes when I cross the line, it's because I'm taking on more of a mother role, and I need to kind of like back off. And so anyway, the current challenges around that. But anyway, but I always had to be the one kind of taking care of things, making things were okay. And then I bring that into the rest of my life, and and it's like breathing. You're not aware of it. Right. Yeah. And so I was conditioned early on to be that person. Yeah. And then I ended up marrying a man who turned out to be an alcoholic, which of course, we always repeat our patterns. And even though that was the one thing I didn't want to do, it's the one thing I did do, but I had 2 beautiful boys out of that. So, but that whole, when you're married to an alcoholic, you are, again, carrying the burden of everything. Right. Mm-hmm. And,
you have to be in charge. Yeah. You have to be large and in charge
because the other
nobody else is going to do it.
No one else is going to do it, but no one else did it my whole life. So I wasn't, it didn't feel uncomfortable.
It was a learned behavior. Not just that, but it was also a survival mechanism of your life. Right.
And I'm like, this doesn't feel uncomfortable. Someone who maybe wasn't raised with addiction would feel uncomfortable. They'd be like, well, that's not right. But I was like, well, I don't know. This is okay. Anyway. So, yes. And now I run my own business, and I always had to be that way. But in this last year, so I did end up getting divorced, and that happened in the last year. And my business has had kind of really exponential growth, just in the 5 years that we opened it, and in particular in this last year. And so there were a lot of things, and my boys are, my oldest went to college, my youngest is applying right now. So there are a lot of things pushing me into, real shifts and changes that happened in my life. And one of the things that I've really tried to do is shift back into my feminine energy and letting other people caretake and being open to that. And it is, that is not comfortable for me.
Is that what led you to people like Bianca and Pascal? Like, how did you get into those spaces? Because I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
I am light years changed. And I don't mean change. I think I've just light years evolved into a different space and understanding of myself. Because all it is yourself. It's just us, right?
Yeah.
And from where I was and where I understood where I thought I was and where I wanted to be. The landscapes are like so different. But interestingly enough, they're also very much the same because we don't really change. Mm-mm. And I mean that in the best way because we are who we are. And you said in the very beginning of this podcast, I knew I'd come back to this, and this is the time. You said, I didn't want to be what I do.
Yes.
And the truth is, we only do what we are.
And yes. And that is
right. That is really the core truth of us at a soul level, from an energetic level. We really, all it is, it's people say, what do you do? It's like, actually, really what you do is who you are. It's who you are. And there is no bad to that. It's whatever that is.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. It's not like it's a bad or good thing. Even when you're imbalanced in your masculine or feminine energy, either way, you are serving who you are at that given time. Our paths change, we evolve, we grow, we change. So going back to the original question, how did you get into a space like that? Because my journey is long and it could take up 10 podcasts, but I want to hear your story to that.
So I would say I'm always curious. I have my doctor, my regular doctor I've gone to forever, but I also have a naturopath. I work with Bianca and Pasquale to do energy work, but I go see a therapist, a traditional therapist as well. I want to be the happiest version of myself and the best version of myself. And so I'm open to whatever I feel like is helping me, whatever is serving me. Mm-hmm. And I don't really give a fuck what other people think. Right.
Good for you.
So, can we swear on the podcast?
Of course you can.
I'm from Boston and
yes,
F is my
It's
second.
Okay.
All right.
There's been plenty of swear words thrown around on this podcast.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So, and
that's another thing. I'll stop you really quick. My husband always laughs. He's like, Tammy doesn't trust any woman that doesn't drop the F-bomb.
See, there you go. Now we are, yes, instant trust right here. You're seeing it live.
It's real.
So I think that helps me, that serves me, working in these male dominated spaces because it doesn't really hit my radar. And I feel very connected to men as well. Mm-hmm. Like I feel very supported by men and that men are like, let me get in there and help. Yeah, right.
They're your advocate.
And I always say, like, you can't fix a problem in the financial services industry with missing 80% of the solution. Right. Yeah. So this is not about like men are bad, women are great.
Right.
This is about the data shows there's a deficit. So how do we fix the deficit and how do we all get on board? So anyway, how did I get into it? So, from my hairstylist, of course.
I love it.
Talk about feminine energy, right? So probably maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago, I was getting my hair done, and I had like this kind of like inflection point, kind of rocky time in my life. And, because being married to an alcoholic, I don't know how much you know, but it ebbs and flows, right? So you have these ups and downs, and you're like, you better stop doing that. And they're like, great, I'm going to stop doing that. And you're like, everything's gonna be fine. And then it like slowly goes back, and then you're in this bad space again. So anyway, well, at least that was my experience,
right,
and had been since I was a child. But I was having a difficult time. I was talking to my hairstylist about it. She's like, I know this is going to sound nuts, but you should really go see my friend Bianca. She does kind of, I don't know, but it's like spiritual counseling.
Mm-hmm. This was 15 years ago?
It was a while ago. It was me. I feel like it was around 2010, because I feel like I was having an incredibly difficult time in my life around 2000. So I think it was that long ago.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, you know what the heck? I'll give it a shot. What do I have to lose? Right. So I book an appointment with her. I'm like, just do it. Don't think about it. You need help, like bring in all the angels you can. Right.
Right.
So I booked this appointment, and I drive over. She was in an office center, and I drove over, and I'm walking up the stairs thinking, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm going to talk to someone who's going to like talk to me about my spirit and my angels and my like soul and do energy. This is
really
insane.
quick. So clearly in your upbringing, this was never something that was part of your experience.
No.
I'm assuming. Like,
my parents
did you have a religious background, or was there?
Okay. Yes. So my father's an atheist. My mother's agnostic. They are hippies but they're not fun-loving, like pot-smoking hippies, like overthrow the U.S. government hippies.
Got it.
Sorry, Mom and Dad. But anyway,
Yes,
it was like they were, and in the 60s, it was about changing the world, whatever. So they were all bought into that.
Okay.
And when I went to Boston Public School, and I lived in the part of Boston we did because my parents believed in urban revitalization, right? Like, and we should live amongst, like people that we can, I don't know, build community with. And certainly we had a great community, but it was a very rough area. And so they ended up sending me to Boston Public School, where I got beaten up in first grade, and they were poor. So they were like, can't send her to, private school, but you send her to Catholic school. So I didn't actually know my parents were atheist and agnostic until probably I was like 20.
So it was just never discussed.
It was never discussed, but I went to Catholic school. So I figured like we're Catholic and
right.
Anyway. And okay. I actually had a wonderful experience with Catholicism, because I think if anyone's Catholic, there are all different orders, right? And there are all different ways to approach Catholicism. Yeah. I think when you have a group of teachers and nuns who are teachers and priests working with, within a parochial school system, and it's a disadvantaged area, I think they're just trying to keep you alive and off of drugs.
Totally different scenario.
They're like Maslow's hierarchy of need. Like, we're just trying to make sure you don't die.
They're just being good humans.
They're being really good humans.
And they're helping you remember that you are worthy of love.
Yeah.
And that's it. They're not jamming the Bible down your throat. They're not trying to push any specific religion down you. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah. In fact, I was in 5th grade. I remember asking Sister Henrietta, because you'd have religion class every day. And I was like, was God a masochist? Because if he could have just made everyone believe in him, why wouldn't he have done that? Why did he torture his own son? Mm-hmm. And to her credit, she was like, let me get Father Divine, who is the parish priest, in here. And he comes in the next class and he's like, well, Nicole, here's the answer. We all have free will. Mm-hmm. And God was just giving his biggest demonstration of what he would do for us so that we would feel the love that we have for him. Anyway, the point is,
that's how they explained it.
She didn't wrap my knuckles with rulers, which did happen when I was younger. But again, that was like in the 70s and 80s, if you didn't beat your children, like you were bad people. So not really, but
I know what you mean,
like
different time.
It was a different time. So, but I had really great experience with
that's cool.
Yeah. So,
but in that, it sounds like you didn't really dive into the depths too far into.
Oh, there was no like mysticism or like what's your relationship? That
wasn't
God?
part of your experience as a youth.
It was not part of my experience, and there was really nothing. There was really, maybe I read my Cosmo sign, like when, Cosmo magazine or something, but it wasn't anything that hit my radar. This was my first kind of real foray into it. And so I'm walking up the stairs to Bianca's and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. All right. I have to I'll tell you, I'm going to back up for a minute, tell you something that seemingly doesn't make sense, but it will in a moment. So when I'm the kind of girl who wears like one scent. Like I wear one perfume and that's a perfume I wear. And I wear it until 10 years later, I'm just sick of it and I want to switch. So
yes, I'm the same.
So I had worn Coco Chanel for a million years. And during this, which makes sense because it was a year when a lot of like crazy things were going on personally, all of a sudden I was like, that is not my scent anymore. And I was trying on other people's perfumes. And I was wearing, at this point, Victor Rolf's Flower Bomb, which is a gorgeous smell. But I had smelled it on my friend's wife, who's like very Scottsdale with like the blonde hair and the boobs and, I love her, but
yes,
she's very not me.
Yes.
I mean, I am blonde, but
I hear you.
But anyway, so I'd gone out to lunch with her. She was wearing it. I'm like, that's gorgeous. So I started wearing it, but I'm like, it's not like my scent really.
Yeah, it's new.
Okay. So I'm walking into Bianca's office and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I am ready to just not go in. I open the door. Bianca comes out, gives me this huge hug, like a long, uncomfortably long hug. I'm like,
you're like, what's happening?
I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? She holds me away at arm's length. She looks into my eyes and says, you're wearing the wrong perfume. And I was like, whatever you're doing, you have sold me. Any doubt has been absolutely erased.
Whoa.
I was just like, you couldn't Google that. Like, no. That's insane.
So what did you say when she said that to you?
I was like, you're right, I am. And she's like, you need something more masculine. Because Victor Rolf's Flower Bomb is very, it's very feminine. And the funny thing is, I think I was just starting to write my book at that point. And I looked up perfumes after the session with her, and there was a perfume called Book by a company called Commodity. And I think they stopped making it like maybe, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something like that. So anyway, now I wear this ridiculously expensive perfume that they make for me in Nordstrom. And I brought my two sons with me to when they stopped making the perfume that I've worn forever, I was like, what about this
one?
Well, it's Le Labo, so like make it for you. But a friend of mine was like, oh, you have to try Sandal 33. Like that is what smells like you. And I had brought my two sons and I'm like, what does this perfume smell like? And my oldest son said, it smells like you. So now I have them make Sandal 33, but they make the label and they write, it smells like you on it. So,
oh my gosh, that's cool.
Anyway, so that's a very long story.
No, but that's really cool. I like that story.
It's about perfume. Yeah. And so there are some like feminine things about me and I swear, but I haven't tried. So that is how I got into kind of this being more open to this spiritual things, the things that we don't know. I did always have a sense that there was a God. I always felt connected to other humans. I felt a lot of empathy for people. I think I naturally always had those inclinations.
Intuition.
But then with Bianca, I mean, and she still says things that I'm like, okay, all right, we're doing what now? Where do we do? Like, okay, I'm ready for that. But Bianca is a great combination of the spiritual and also just like good
life
common sense
and real
and very real. And Pasquale does that for me as well. He's very much, this is what you need to be doing. Like from a technical standpoint, even though we're talking about all these other unseen thing.
For sure. Well, the thing that's so fascinating about that, and that really is the only way that it works, because we are having a human experience. Yeah. And so if you can't implement what it is you're learning for the, like you said, the unseen, then it's really not serving you in this life. Because I mean, really, you need to be able to implement it into your life that is run by your masculine energy, and it is part of your experience. So if you can't understand how to create that in your actual working daily life, because you can't live, I always say this, you can't live in the woo-woo.
No.
You have to live in this, we don't have to, we chose to live in this body. So if you can't master what the understanding of that is and have a different awareness and live your life through that, you really are missing it.
Yes. And I feel that the combination of both things is so important to especially the female experience. And I know this sounds probably crazy, but the female experience within finance. And so not just women who are working in the financial field, but everyone has a relationship with money.
Huge. This is a big point. I know where you're going with this.
Well, so we all have this relationship with money. And I also give a number of talks about just women in finance, like the average woman and what they should be doing from a financial standpoint. And what I always start with is there's nothing in financial services that's designed to feel comfortable for you. Mm-hmm. And I used to start, sorry, I'm sure compliance is going to kill me for this, but I'd show pictures of my old, the office that I used to work in and the foyer, because it had big brass handles and a huge dark wooden, credenza when you walked in, and it had abstract art on the wall and tile floors with no rugs and black leather furniture and flat screen TVs. And I would say to the room full of women, if you were going to decorate a room in your house like this, what would the room be? And everyone's like, it's a man cave.
Right.
So there are so many things that we do as women naturally that when it comes to finance, we're told not to do. Mm-hmm. And it cuts that feminine off, right? So women, we naturally create connections in community. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like my best friends and your best friends, you probably know their childbirth stories, the deepest disappointments of their lives, the most tragic things that happened to them as children. Mm-hmm. But you probably don't know how much they have saved for retirement.
Right. Right.
You don't.
No.
You don't.
No,
and
it's taboo.
No. And like if they've had an affair or if they've, had sexual violence visited on them. Yep. Like, the
depths of their experience,
and
trauma, everything, but you don't know that.
You don't know that. We don't talk about it. And we're told not to talk about it.
I know.
In financial services. And so that's where I bring some of this, energy work around, like the energy in financial services is very masculine. Mm-hmm. We're not aware of it, right? We just think that's what a financial services office should look like. This is what the experience should feel like. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't be talking to people about it, right? And that is where our womanly power comes in, is when we create community, when we create connection, when we have those deep dives. Like I remember my ex-husband, probably, I don't know, let's call it 3 weeks after I had given birth, goes and golfs with a bunch of his buddies who also, their wives had just had babies as well. So they're on the golf course an entire day, right? He comes back, I'm like, what did they say about having babies? And what did you guys talk about? And he's like, oh, we didn't talk about that.
No, of course not.
I'm like, so the most significant experience of your life, having your first child, wasn't a topic of conversation over the 6 hours that you were with men who had the exact same experience. It's insane to me, but that thought process definitely is intact in financial services. You don't talk about it. You don't talk about your wins and losses. You don't talk about your vulnerabilities. And truly, that's the first step for financial services is we need to break that pattern and that mold. And women, we get to bring our feminine energy to financial services. And if you're not feeling comfortable with it as a woman, find a woman who you do feel comfortable with, or a man. There are a lot of amazing men out there. Don't have one bad experience and think that is the experience that I have to have. Right. There are men and women out there that have a space for your feminine energy and your skills and your power as women. And you need to feel comfortable bringing that. asking the questions, creating community. Find other women that you want to create accountability partners with. You don't have to talk about your finances with everyone, just like you don't talk about your innermost secrets with everyone.
Right.
But find
your trusted people that you can open up to with this, because it's no different than for women out there, for all your deep, dark secrets or your pains and struggles that you've had, or whatever it is that we do. We divulge so much to women to women. It's unbelievable. I mean, like the depths,
insane.
Even things that people do, in their own family or they're in their own marriage don't know, like things that they just don't even know because they cannot divulge and be open. And this is really an interesting topic, because there's something to this energetically. You're totally right about, and it's truly the masculine and feminine energy. And I think generally money, and I'm not sure on this, I'm just speaking from what feels right now, which is money naturally is more of a masculine energy in its essence, because it is what keeps us moving forward. It's what is our livelihood. It's how we survive, at least these days. It didn't used to be that way. Back in the day, it was the men that would go and hunt and they would do these things. It's our trade. It's our exchange for whatever. So, and that innately throughout time has been a masculine thing.
We have masculinized it. So I would say it's different. So I think money actually is very feminine. Most of the household decisions in terms of expenditures of money are made by women.
Well, it's funny that you say that too, because you listened to Lloyd's podcast. Lloyd talked about that. He talked about money, and he talked about, what did he say? He said people undervalue what women do because I don't remember where I was going with that.
Because they're not, well, and I say that all the time. So I'm like, women who are professionals versus women who stay at home, like whatever mean 8th grade girl came up with that whole, like, we're at each other's throats, or there's like, like team stay at home or team work. Like that mean 8th grade girl needs to be taken out into the, we need to get rid of her. Bye. Because that is a lie.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of these foundational beliefs that we have around money where we do think that it is masculine, but truly women make like 3/4 of the household expenditure decisions within anyone's household.
Yeah.
Not if they're head of house, but women are the ones who are like, yes, we're going to buy that car. Yes, we're going to do this.
Oh, that's what he said. Lloyd talked about, like, he's like, okay, so why are people say women are bad drivers, but why do women have lower car insurance? Like examples like that. It was like, look, there's more to a female and her energy in life that men or society, not even men and women, give undue balance to
in their own minds. But if you look at the data around it, and truly, like, the other thing is money is just a thing. So money is actually meaningless. Like money is just a piece of paper.
Yes.
Like or a balance in your bank account. Like it has no value. Like it has no energetic value. It's what you give to it.
Right.
And if you actually look at the data, like Lloyd was saying, the data around it is that women actually manage money and are the stewards of money in one way, shape, or form more than men are. But it has become masculinized because it is a center of power.
Right. Power.
And here's the thing, and I always say this is getting a little deep, but if you want to subjugate anybody, a population, a nation, what do? You control the currency, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you're really going to subjugate them, you make them think that you're doing it for their own benefit.
Well, it's funny, interesting, around the same vibration of what you're saying is, and I've said this before, when I think about Jesus and I think about Mary Magdalene, they mastered, I think, both of them as individuals, their masculine and feminine energy. And they brought that to this world, and they were stellar examples. Are they the only examples? No, there's lots of that in this world, and there continues to be more of that. But I do feel very strongly that those two individuals understood that this has nothing to do with power or control. This has to do with their relationship with their own masculine and feminine energy. They both have both.
Yes. And they're
both
equal.
of them. And they're equal. And that's why again, going back to power, we talk about the Bible and we talk about the things that were eliminated, and Mary Magdalene is nowhere in there. And she was Jesus's most trusted disciple.
she was
they were partners.
She has a gospel.
Exactly. I've read it.
Google it. Yes.
There's a book and I read this, but this changed my whole thing. Was Mary Magdalene Revealed? I don't know if you've read it.
Yes.
It's an incredible book.
I tell everyone about it.
Yes. It's the best book. That's why I wear my little red band.
And you are like my person because it's
huge.
It's huge because she wrote a gospel,
yes.
and not only was her gospel taken out because, in the Council of Nicene, and they were like, hey, we're going to figure out what's in the Bible and what's out. But they removed not only her gospel, but they removed other disciples' gospels.
Thomas,
who aligned with her and supported what she had to say.
And by the way, so did Jesus.
Right.
So it is interesting. That's a whole nother podcast talking about what has been included and not included in the Bible. And I have no issue with the Bible. I think there's a lot of beauty in the Bible, but the Bible was created by a man. It was written by men, and it was redacted by men.
Created by men.
It was put together. It was put together by men. And it included and discluded by men. So there's so much more gospel out there that has been even still yet to be discovered. And a gospel that has been discovered that people are not aware of that really paint this bigger picture of, like you're saying,
because Mary Magdalene's gospel is about your direct connection with God.
And that doesn't control anybody because it's all within it. We have our own power.
And you know what else her gospel is about? Going into yourself.
Yes.
And meditation.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
It's about hearing your own voice and within yourself. Connection. And that is... So the feminine, our powers, the things that we do naturally, I call them our female superpowers, creating that connection, creating that community.
Yeah.
Those are all things that have been cut out from so many things, like you mentioned the Bible. And I also I'm like a spiritual Christian. I'm huge team Jesus. Like I think he's, but I'm also open to every other religion out there. I'm not saying
there's truth to all of it.
There's truth to all of it. And there's alignment and there's synergies within, every discipline and religion out there. A lot of cross-pollination, a lot of building upon the religion that maybe, manifested before. Anyway, so, but I think finance is just one of those spaces that has become masculinized because of the power. So the money isn't the thing. The power that money gives you,
the energy behind
is the thing, the energy behind it. Mm-hmm. But truly, when you look at the data, women are more in control of money and financial decisions. Mm. And we know it. It's a known thing. Like, quote unquote, even a stay-at-home mom, she's probably paying all the bills. She she's like, this is the internet provider we're using. We're cutting the cord with cable or we're not, or this is where our kids are signing up for. I mean, those are all financial decisions that women are making. Mm-hmm. Women just get discounted. But if you look at it, and here's the other thing, if you're a stay-at-home mom, like what other job would you or any other person listening take if they were like, look, you're going to knock yourself out for 18 years, right? You're going to kill yourself. You're going to sweat blood. You're going to put your all into it and you aren't going to have any time off and you're not going to get any bonuses. You're basically working for free, but you will feel fulfilled, good for you. And at the end of 18 years, you get fired. Now you don't really, cause you're always a mom, but in essence, you're fired.
Yeah.
Who would sign up for that?
Right.
Who would sign up for that?
Well, and if I did 4 times.
Yeah. And if you do the accounting of who you would have to hire to replace her. I have this talk all the time with men because men are like, oh, I'm not going to get an insurance policy on my wife. And I'm like, so let's dig into that. So your wife stays at home. And if she got hit by a bus tomorrow, let's talk about how much would it cost to to hire someone to drive your kids around, to cook all your meals, to take the dogs to the vet,
all
to
the
be
workload that she does.
Yes, everything. And that's like the surface thing.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That's not even the mental load and making sure the family's mentally intact and running and whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not saying men aren't part of that. Again, I am not a male basher. I will. You're never going to I ain't that girl.
Yeah.
I want as many men to listen to this and be like, I'm going to dig in. I'm going to tell my wife she needs to have wine with her girlfriend, and I'm going to give her all of the financials, and they need to compare. They need to start having those conversations again. You don't need to go into a space that feels uncomfortable to you or You can talk about finances with your girlfriend over a bottle of wine, or if you don't drink, you can do it over, a non-boozy brunch, or, over going and getting a mani-pedi.
Yeah.
Like make it, make finances
Part of your conversation.
Make them feminine again.
Yeah.
Because we really do, if you look at the data, we're about to inherit even more money. So it's critically important for us to, and even if you're not comfortable, don't do it for yourself, then do it for your daughters. Do it for the women at work who look up to you. Do it for your nieces. Because if you don't do it, if you're not modeling that behavior,
right.
Nothing
It's going to carry on. It's going to carry on.
Nothing changes, and you don't need to master it. You don't need to be the best thing ever.
But just start by making it an open piece of conversation. Period. Start there. Just don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. Just say it, say to your friend, I know this might sound crazy, but I listen to this podcast and I want to get a financial accountability partner, and I want to make it fun. And it's not something we have to do all the time, but I have some goals and things that I want to do. And I want to talk through here's where I'm at right now. Here's where I want to be. Will you make sure I get this credit card paid off? Will you make sure that I'm saving for this new car that I want, or whatever?
And let's keep each other accountable for our goals.
And I would say, even if you are living paycheck to paycheck, and I appreciate that.
Most of the world is doing that.
Most of the world is doing that. Most of the world.
Oh yeah.
And
that's the norm.
That is the norm. But I would say, it just like anything else, like going to the gym, eating healthy, habits. That's what finance is. So saving, and I'll tell you, I've been in financial services for 15 years. Being fiscally responsible and financially secure actually has nothing to do with your paycheck. I've seen people who make over $1 million a year and have almost nothing to show for it.
Oh yeah.
Because that's
more common, in fact, because they're more sloppy with their money.
They're sloppy and they're like, I'm just going to keep making it and it's never going to run out. And that's not necessarily the case. Mm-mm. And I've seen people who earn, little better than minimum wage and have 3 months of savings in their safety net account and have an incredibly healthy 401k balance. And all
and
their
it's because
bills
they've been guided to learn how to do those skills that they were not taught.
Yes.
They're learning those skills from people like you.
Or someone just told them. Like that, the thing is, as humans, especially as women, we all want to do the right thing, right? It's not that we don't want to do the right thing. There's just no meaningful financial literacy taught in schools.
So true.
So if I ever run for office, that is going to be my main platform.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me. My son, Jacob, who graduated in May, my oldest son, they didn't have this class, I don't think. It was called Financial Math. And it's a class that teaches you true life skills like filing your taxes, like saving, like paying your bills, like writing a check, like the things that are not taught to people that are young anymore, or ever were, really. I mean, it teaches them, and it's funny because he even says, he's like, yeah, I really now understand like how money works better. And I mean, to his credit, he really dove in and asked the questions to understand it more. And it does need to be taught in schools.
It needs to be. It's criminal that it's not taught in schools. And I
love that class. I was like, that's amazing.
And why? Now I've spoken to. I do a lot of work with the American Retirement Association, and I help lobby on behalf of them for different things in the financial services area. But I talked to one of our lead lobbyists, and I was like, I don't understand why this is so difficult. Like, why can't we just bridge this? And
what kind of response do you get?
So he had said that there's a lot of pushback from teachers unions, which I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I don't know. My mom was a teacher. Like, I don't know any teacher that wouldn't want to have something of value,
right?
Like of true
life skills
value in their classrooms.
Because they're teaching plenty of things that does not matter in the big picture.
I mean, my cynical view is I think if anything, it's the credit card companies who are like, because when you think about it, I don't know. So I went to college. I don't know if you went to college, but first thing I got was not a letter from home. It was hey,
you want a credit card?
You can get a credit card. And guess what? Spring break 1998 went on my credit card.
And you're like, free money.
Free money. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to spend the rest of my life, paying this off. So, but I would say credit is good. Debt is bad. Right.
Yes,
so I would say you want to have credit.
Yeah.
You just don't have debt.
Yeah.
But anyway, the people who typically are good about money, maybe they've had a class, they've had so many have had bosses who, and that's why I'm saying, like, you don't know who you're influencing. They've had bosses who someone new joins the company or their division or whatever, sits next to them in the cubicle, and they're like, you're signing up for the 401k. You're going to put at least 10% away. You're going to at least, and and you're never, and every time you get a raise, you're going to put another percent in. And it doesn't have to be 10%. I'm just,
yes, I hear you. But they're guiding them.
They're guiding them, and it hits. People want to do the right thing. They just don't have the information
to do it.
And then we give them 15,000 other things that are on fire that must be taken care of right now. And then we're like, oh, it's your fault for not being financially responsible. No. They're like barely trying to survive. We have to meet people where they are.
Well, and you got to educate people.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know.
You have to educate them in a way that doesn't shame them.
Right.
As humans, we are literally biologically built to avoid things that cause us pain. So if you're going to start off a conversation with like, well, you've really fucked it up so far. Like, you're never going to get to it. Like, you've lost them.
Yeah. Well, this is an energetic thing too. And we talk about this a lot here is self-forgiveness. Okay. So yeah, all of us screw up. All of us make mistakes. You're not human if you don't. I mean, we all do it. So I don't care where you are on your spiritual journey, on your life journey, wherever you are, period. There are things that you have made mistakes with. That doesn't mean you need to shame them. It means you need to acknowledge them so you can grow and learn from them and move forward in a better way for yourself.
It's fail forward.
Right.
It's everything.
Exactly.
In everything. And it's never too late.
No.
So anyway, so that's
it. I really love this conversation because I think that it is such a taboo topic, not just even with women, with men too. They're very secretive about their money and they don't want to talk about who makes what. And yes, there's some masculine flexing going on. That too does happen, but it's usually with the stuff that they spend their money on. It's not necessarily their finances and the behind the scenes. But the thing that's interesting is that if people can get around the fact that it's okay to just be honest with where you're at, because chances are the person you're talking to is in the same boat or worse.
Right. Well, here's the other thing. Nothing's going to change if nothing changes.
Yeah.
And I would say, yes, men are equally as guilty of not connecting and communicating, but men don't, that's not their superpower in general, right? Like, I'm sure they're a great communicator.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. In general.
That's
this is no exception.
My ex-husband never talked about like having a baby, right? And none of the other guys did too. So it's like, but women like that, that's my challenge to women is like, take the thing that you do naturally that you think is powerful because it comes easily to you. So it's like breathing. So you don't think about it, but take that thing and just add in to a few people in your circle to talk about finances.
Money. Yeah.
And, fem it up. Like, it doesn't have to be this masculine
daunting topic.
No, with spreadsheets and whatever, like get a pad of paper, pop open a bottle of wine, go get a massage afterward, whatever.
Yeah.
Like make it feminine, make it
like any other topic you discuss.
Exactly. And take your power back.
It is true that men just naturally are not as open as women. They don't talk about all the little things. It's funny. My husband and I just this morning over coffee, we're talking about, he's like, I just read the coolest, my husband's amazing. He's like, I just read the coolest article. He said, it was about crying. And I said, well, what was it? He's like, cause he has a feed that he likes to tap into. And he's like, if it grabs me, he dives into it. And he said, I've read stuff like this, but for some reason this grabbed me. And he said, I read it and it was really interesting. It was talking about crying because you hear a lot speaking about men that don't cry or they don't let anybody see them cry ever. So it's not uncommon to hear a wife or a son or daughter to say, I've never seen my dad cry or I've never seen my husband cry. That is so common. And it's funny because when we hear that, well, when Eric specifically hears that, and I'm blessed because I grew up around men that had no problem crying. Both my dad, my stepdad, my brothers. I mean, tears are not something that we shy away from. We are just emotional people and we embrace that about ourselves. So I've been blessed in that experience because it's never been a taboo thing. It's just been natural. But for so many, that is not common.
For me, like I struggle with that. I want to hear what you're like.
So what he said was, I'm getting goosebumps. He said, the thing that was fascinating about the stories is that it really breaks it down. He said, this wasn't a soul, because I always take things on the spiritual level. And he's like, this wasn't a spiritual soul thing. Because to me, I believe that when we cry, that's our soul speaking to us, trying to get our attention on something, whatever the thing is that's flaring up the tears. So that's a thing where it's like, if you're crying, because I'll cry for no reason. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm listening. Like, what is going on with me? What is it that's happening in this moment that's creating this overwhelming enough to create tears, right? But he said from a human perspective, from a chemical, physical perspective, tears are truly a release of toxins in your body. Because when we have emotions or grief or sorrow or stress or anxiety or anything, fill in the blank, that we're struggling with in our life, tears are a natural release of those toxins that need to come out of our body. And when we don't release them, they create dis-ease in our body. So cancers and ailments and pains and things that really develop in our body, because everything that we don't release energetically, which this is part of the soul thing, is that when your soul is trying to communicate with you, you need to release things. That's why we have these blocks. And of course, that's why our bodies are these beautiful indicators of other bigger issues at work that are happening internally. So we have to really examine those things. But it was interesting because he said that the thing that I learned, the biggest takeaway I had was that people don't realize how crucial it is for us to cry and release. And when we don't, it creates illness and pain and struggle and all the things that manifest in our bodies. It was cool how he talked about it. There were like 7 points that he came across, and he read the different layers of why it's important, why it happens, and why it comes out of your face. And there were so many things to it. It was really, really fascinating.
Again, that hits really hard because I've always struggled with crying. And I even at one point asked my mom, like, when I was little, did I cry? And she's like, no, you just would kind of throw temper tantrums. I'm like, okay, that tracks. But this last year, I went through a divorce. There was a lot of angst around that. It was hard on my children. And I've been also trying to move into more of my feminine energy this year and let those tears come. And I'm dating this amazing man who I have cried more. I think he thinks that I'm a natural crier because I cry around him and will happen for no reason. But I think it's because I'm finally at a point in my life. I turned 50 this year, and I think I'm at this point in my life where I'm like, I am worthy of being loved and taken care of. Mm-hmm. And that vulnerability is something. And feeling. And that is something I've never allowed. And I did this examination of myself, probably a couple of years ago, where I'm like, what is it I feel when someone cries? So I get.
Yeah, what does happen? That was another thing we talked about. It was part of the article. Keep going.
So I feel like someone's manipulating me when they cry. Even when I know logically, if my child is crying, but my immediate gut feeling is that person is trying to manipulate me. And I think it's because my mother did struggle with depression. So she, when things got tough, would cry and withdraw. And then I would have to step up and take care of stuff.
Makes sense.
So when someone cries, I'm like, well, now they want me to take care of something. All right, what do you need me to fix? And that is a shit way to feel, right? Or to think about it, right? Because that's not, to your point, people are having a genuine emotional feeling or connection to something that is hitting them spiritually, emotionally, and you need to let them have that. And if you're really empathetic and wonderful, the help they need is just for you to be there and sit with them and help them through that moment.
Well, that was part of the thing that he talked about. He's like, what is your first response when you see somebody crying? Typically, not what you just said, but typically he's like, you want to give them a hug, or you want to be like, oh my gosh. And you reach out to them and you say, are you okay? What's wrong? It's designed that way. So the person that you're speaking with or the people that you're around can visibly see something is happening to this person.
And now I need to come over and and be around them. They need some help. And usually the help, when you're crying, it is about releasing something that's in you. You don't even necessarily need help. Your help is, I just need to get this out.
I just have to express.
And I need someone to sit down next to me, put a hand on me, or just be there. Put an arm around me. Just be there.
Just sit and quiet with me.
Just be there.
Yes, exactly. And that's that's the beauty of us as spiritual beings having a human experience is so cool, because that is really what taps in. All of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, your heart and soul, if you're seeing somebody in real pain and they're crying, it's an impossible reaction to just be like, screw them. We naturally don't have that experience. We naturally go, something's wrong. Even if you don't naturally jump to them and say, come to their aid, you still, something inside of you is going, oh my gosh, something's really wrong.
Something's right. Well, it creates an emotional response in you.
But it's also too, it's not even always about pain or discomfort. A lot of times the emotion that comes, it's when it moves you. Because there's a difference between tears that move you to tears, like you watch a movie. And it also, the article also talked about, I need to read it because I didn't read it. I'm just going by what I'm paraphrasing.
You need to send it to me.
I will.
What's your husband's name?
Eric.
Eric, send it to us.
But he said also, it's the, where was I going with that? He was talking about expressing and releasing. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Being moved by the moment.
Oh, he said also after you express, whether it's like you watched a movie and it made you like cry, he said, even if it made you feel yucky and that's what made you cry about whatever it is you experienced or witnessed or watched, afterwards, you automatically feel better.
Yes.
It's a release. You just feel better. It's like an endorphin release. All of a sudden, you've let this block go and energetically it's been removed from you. So you instantly feel better.
Yes.
It's like people say you need a good cry.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times, I mean, really up until this last year, I would stop myself. So that's been part of me moving into more of my feminine energy. Even my perfume. I was thinking now about the perfume story because I got this, so now I still wear Sundial 33, but every once in a while when I go to work and I'm wearing, like, that's my like masculine smell, but I've been dating and I'm like, you know what? I wanted something more feminine around him. Like, I don't want to have to be in charge all the time. And he wants to caretake. So I got Burberry Her, which is very feminine. And I'm like, so I try to wear that around him just as a reminder to myself, like,
it's okay to let down.
The war's over. Like, you get to actually just be taken care of and you get to have someone who wants to have conversations and let you be emotional. And
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that's been great. So, anyway, so I'm not trying to just bring feminine energy into finance, but also more into myself.
Yeah. It's a huge turning point. I know I've been on a long journey with that. I've talked about it a lot here, is that I was very, very much in masculine energy and I still have a lot of masculine energy. It is truly who I am.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me me, which I also love and embrace. But on the flip side of that, I realized that there is a balance there. And when I recognize that I'm out of balance, Christy Whitman, who was on here, she's amazing. She talks about how emotions are indicators also of where you're at and where the imbalances are. Because we tend to, similar to crying, we tend to be hard on ourselves when we're feeling or reacting to something that we don't like, or something that makes us angry or sad, or whatever it is, a heightened on the more fear-based emotions. It lowers our vibration to a point where it's like, okay, well, I don't like this. I don't want to feel this way. How do I get over this? I don't like this feeling, right? And it's impossible to go from this negative energy all the way over to this positive energy. So what you have to do is allow it, acknowledge it, and say, oh, I'm feeling this way. It's okay that I feel this way. I need to give myself tons of compassion right now because this is real for me. I'm crying or I'm feeling or whatever the thing that's happening. And then as soon as you can acknowledge it and let it be what it is and accept it and forgive yourself for having it and have some compassion, it naturally will neutralize. And once you're neutral, you can swing right back over to that high vibrating feminine energy. There's where that balance is. It's like a pendulum.
So everything that you just said is the roadmap for becoming empowered around finance.
Yeah.
Like everything you just said is about letting go of feeling overwhelmed or it's not for me or it's scary, feeling it, going through it, and then coming into your power. And your power over here is financial. It's not even amassing large amounts of money. It's just about feeling empowered around finance. So everything you said, yes, please do that. And please do that around finance.
Yeah, I love that. This was such a great conversation because money is such a taboo topic, and specifically not just with women, with men too, but specifically with women who naturally are communicators, yet somehow we are not excelling in this, but we can get better. And where we're not getting better, like you said, we fall forward and say, fail forward and say, okay, I now know this. I have this awareness about myself. Let's get neutral here and figure out another way.
Yes.
And we can change.
And there are other great podcasts by women, for women around finance. There's a great podcast. I think it's called the Budgetista. Anyway, just Google female financial podcasts. There are a lot of great ones out there. So you can you take it in bite sizes on your own time.
Yeah.
So I would just, there are resources out there.
I love that. Well, thank you for this conversation. This
you.
is a topic that we have not discussed, and it really resonates with me, and I'm sure with so many that will hear this.
I really hope so.
So tell me how people can engage with you, because I know people will hear this and say, well, I want to work with her if I'm going to be doing finance stuff and I need some guidance or whatever. How do they find you? What's the best way to tap into that with you?
So the best way to tap into that, I would say, is you can always email me if you have questions. So it's just Nicole, Nicole, at I would actually, I'll give an easier email. So Nicole at buckmancorning.com. So BUCKMAN, Corning, my last name, CORNING.com.
Okay.
Or if you Google me, I just come up. Like, yeah. I like, if you put my name in, which is so funny to me, because I'm like, is there a more basic bitch name than Nicole Corning? Like, I am the whitest woman in America, right? Like, but if you'd think like there are 5 million of me. There are not. So just, if you put in Nicole Corning, I pop
She's
up.
Gonna pop up.
I pop up. So you'll be able to find me. So if you are listening to this driving, don't worry about writing it down. Just put in Nicole Corning. I pop up. You can find all my information.
Very good. And I'll put notes. I'll put your information in the notes, the show notes, so people can find you that way too.
Perfect.
So, Nicole, this was beautiful. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing your experiences and helping people understand all the things that you've learned and what you've experienced in this space, because I think it really is just as important as anything else in life.
Yeah.
And how to navigate it and to step into, like you said, our power with this, all of us, men and women.
Yeah. And I would like to close with, it's just coming to me. There's a story told to me by a man in my industry who is an amazing advocate for women. And he lost his daughter unexpectedly and does a lot of work around empowering, especially younger women, through an organization called ROX, ROX. So if anyone's like, Google that too, it's amazing. And he tells the story about the starfish. So he says there's a woman walking along the beach, and the tide's out. There are 1,000 starfish on the beach, right? And when the sun comes up, they're going to dry out, right? And she's walking along, and as she's walking, she's picking up a starfish and she's throwing it back into the ocean. I'm like going to get all teary just even talking about this. You look at me and my feminine energy here. So, and there's a man behind her, and he's like, there's so many of them. Like, you're not going to fix all. You can't save them all. And she says, I know, but I made a difference for that one starfish. So I hope I made a difference for the one starfish out there. And I hope they'll do one thing, listen to a podcast, certainly get in touch with me, do the work, sign up for the course, educate yourself, find a friend and find that accountability partner, have a glass of wine with them, just do one thing.
Yeah.
So if there's one starfish out there, this conversation has been more than worth it.
Oh, I'm sure that you've touched many, many starfish. So thank you for doing that. And that was a beautiful story. That was a perfect way to conclude everything that you just said, because it's true. If you can make one, and I've said that from all along, if this message, and I'll say this as we part, is that if this message resonates with you, or you know someone that it will resonate with, please share it, because you don't know where somebody is in their walk, on their journey. And so if you feel that there's something about this that someone needs to know, please, I encourage you to share it with them, because it could be life-changing, and it could be life-changing for you as well listening. So I hope that it was certainly helpful for me. I loved it. And this is definitely like a topic that we haven't touched on. So I love it, because it's just as, like I said, it's just as important on every level that any other topic we discuss here. So, and I love your delivery. You're my kind of girl.
Yeah, you're my kind of girl. You have to say fuck before we end, though.
Oh,
so
fuck that.
There you go.
She's like, no, that doesn't count.
See, it's a two-way street. It's a true friendship.
Oh my gosh. No, it's true. It's so true. Eric says that all. She's like, oh, if they don't say fuck, Tammy's going to have a real problem.
There's that masculine energy, but I did almost tear up a little bit. So the feminine energy, we got the balance, baby.
So thank you all for listening. If you want additional information, of course, you can always go to my website, TammyTuesday.com, and our social media, which is at Tammy Tuesday Life as well. If you're listening to this, we do stream these as well on YouTube, so you can find our channel there to like and subscribe. We love it when you do that, because it also helps these rise to the top for the right people that need them, that find them. So we appreciate any comments or anything you have, feedback. We love all of those. So please engage. It means a lot to us. And always sending you with lots of love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.